All right, thanks for joining. This is design review call number 35 with the Resolvr team. And thank you all for joining. So for me, this project, I've known it for 4 or 5 months or so. It was part of Legends of Lightning, Volume 2. And I think it won one of the awards. I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but I think it did. And Uti, who is here, who will do some of the talking, who's designer on the project. Him and I have been talking in behind the scenes as the project went through Legends of Lightning, so I got to follow along a little bit. But I'm not gonna say much more. I'm gonna share the link to the GitHub here to this issue. There are links to the website resolvr.io, which is live. And then there are some other links here to the Bolt Fund profile and also the page where it was announced that they won or were one of the winners of the hackathon. And I do think one link is missing. Did someone find the FigJam document? Let me see. Okay, I got it here. I'm gonna paste it also in the chat. Here we go. And now I'll hand it over to Uti. Please take it away. How's it going, Uti? You said earlier you had audio problems.
Yes. Seems that
Okay.
he's not muted. So
Well, if we don't have Udi, I'm another member of the Resolvr team. I can
awesome.
substitute until he gets online.
Awesome. Yeah, he was just there. His video and audio was working great, but maybe something happened here. So yeah, thanks for joining, Steve. Would you then like to give us a bit of an intro to the project?
Sure. Resolvr set out to create a dispute resolution service for open source bounties. That was kind of our first target, was to allow open source contributors to start on work and feel that they had an enforceable system. These were Bitcoin denominated bounties, to ensure that if they do the work, they can open a dispute if for whatever reason they're not being given the reward, and a third party. So we've been using Resolvr users on Zap polls to ultimately decide whether or not the submission fulfilled the initial bounty. So that's what our Legends of Lightning submission, the scope was to provide open source projects with the ability to kind of take care of their own disputes over bounties without having to bring outsiders in. And we're kind of extending that for now. Top Builder, Pleb Lab started a competition that we're trying to add a little bit more for free and open source communities to resolve disputes. And we have a desktop app that we initially created, and we just have a bunch of UX targets to make the whole ability to use our bounty board and connect it with the desktop app a little bit better. So that's kind of what we're focused on currently. Excited to be chatting with the design community as we are on this journey to figure out how to really make it a little bit more seamless, and some of the technology with Noster and the key pair management and some of the things that we've decided to start building with. I think we have a lot of work to do as far as making it more usable. So excited to be here.
Awesome. If I may ask, what was the initial thing that drove you to this? Was it that you had bad experiences with bounties and you just saw a problem there? Was it maybe more a technical approach or something else?
I think there was a OpenSats had a bounty up. I forget exactly what the context was, but one of the submissions, I know there was quite a bit of like community consensus that the submission kind of fulfilled it, but then they moved the goalpost on the bounty, which was kind of like, okay, well, they're giving up the money, so like they get to determine what they meant, and if it was confusing, and people started building one direction, but they meant to do it another. It just, kind of created a little bit of a friction to where people who have the skills and the talent and the knowledge to contribute to these bounties, maybe they don't feel like they would actually get paid, even if they don't have that binding thing. So we wanted to create something that creates almost like a court system that has review and actually creates binding settlements, but without the state court system. So that's where we ended up on Bitcoin Master and more of the peer-to-peer technology stack to allow for binding dispute resolutions. But yeah, I think there was an OpenSats one last year that kind of our team was looking at it like, oh, well, that kind of they moved the goalpost a little bit on the contributors, and maybe there's a way to do it to where if somebody actually did the work and everybody looks at it and says, oh, well, they did what you said, they still get the money, even if what they meant to say could have been something else. So we're trying to avoid those type of outcomes and also reduce the friction to contribute to these open source projects. So more assurances around actually getting the rewards that are put up.
Yeah, for more context, the bounty was HRF bounty for
That was HRF,
44.
yeah.
Yeah, it was Matty's bounty at Northern Iris. So they broke the bounty in half after he made the submission for the bounty and gave him one half of the bounty. So
Right, which ended up being, I think, a fair resolution, but at the time it was kind of all in the HRF's dictate, which they're putting up the money and controlling where it goes. I think they have a lot of control already, but bringing it a little bit more to the contributor and the taker who was working on the bounties, give a little bit more assurance to them. So if they do start on it and they're using Resolvr, then they are going to have the ability to prove they did the work and uh, get paid, even if there is a little bit of funky activity on the other side, which inevitably, the disagreements, disputes happen. So we're trying to resolve them. So that's where Resolver came from.
yeah, and basically we built for like the Legends of Lightning. One reason that we have this call today is after we built for the Legends of Lightning and we have our users like using the product at least from it's just early days and bounty life cycles sometimes can be like 6 months or like 3 months. It's there's a particular way that the product is being used that is not how we built it, and it's becoming something of like point of contention for us. So if you saw I start on the Fig Jam board, that's where I asked the question of a bounty economy and like a gig economy. So in Resolver now we allow makers to assign bounties. Yeah, Christopher, you can zoom in there. Yeah, yeah. We allow makers to assign bounties. That like all the bounties on Resolver are not assigned. So like the life cycle does not actually play out. So it's either our messaging is saying one thing and they are doing another thing, or it's 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 what they want and we built something else. So yeah, so that's basically where we have like our design problem that we may have to like find what is like the right way to do this now because we did something wrong. So I don't know who has gone through the whiteboard and has seen exactly what I meant by that. If you've gone to the whiteboard, I tried to just draw it out and conclude it and show all the data, but I
Can
have,
you pull it up, or is it
yeah,
on the Figma? I can pull it up.
yeah, it's behind Christoph. The link is in the chat.
Okay, what Christoph has it? Gotcha.
Yeah. So basically what are we building? Is it for like assigned bounties? Is it to assign it, which is like a gig economy, or is it to leave it open and people as a community fund it and continue to build towards it till one person finally gets it. So it's what we built, as I said, what we built is for the gig economy where you assign and you work with your taker. It's how people are currently using Resolvr. It's where they post the bounty and they forget about it and they never assign it. They just wait for someone to tell them that the bounty is achieved or is done. And like they just after that they are waiting for like the submission of the bounty. So it's kind of like a broken flow somewhere there. So I don't know who can interpret this better than me or whether I'm confusing everybody here.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, I only have limited experience with bounties, but I also compare it a little bit to freelance work. Or a lot of times when you're like a design freelancer, clients will just say, well, maybe you can make something for us, and then we'll decide if we want to move forward. So they want you to put in that work, but not guarantee that you're actually going to get the project. uh, and there are kinds of funny dynamics with Bitcoin bounties. I had one situation where someone on Twitter in some reply said like, "Oh, 100,000 sats to do this and that," and it's just kind of reply. But then somehow that ended up in some GitHub database and some website, and half a year later, someone said, "Hey, I want that bounty," and I actually had no idea about it. It was a project that I maintained, and then somehow someone came around and all of that. So, and that was also weird. So something that might be helpful is, have you studied what makes like successful bounties and what happened during the life cycle of those bounties? What made them successful? Some characteristics, because I could imagine also that helping people formulate a bounty well with clear expectations is pretty helpful. And I'm sure there are different categories. Like for example, there's a very small thing that I'd like to get done that's kind of technical. I don't know exactly to do it, but it's very well defined, very, very clear outcome, which is kind of different than, let's say, I want a new brand for my project, which there's a certain subjective part to it where I just kind of have to see it. We might need to go through some iterations. I really want collaboration. And then it's less clear exactly what will come out on the other end. So studying those things might be helpful um, for tweaking the technology and the user flows in to set
Yeah,
up people for success.
yeah. I got to speak with the recent Albi's bounty of liquid wallets. Yeah, there was a submission that fulfilled the bounty, although it has not been paid, but Albi accepted the bounty. So I had to ask him like what was the expectation going into like the bounty and from the Albi, the poster from Albi, and it was something like it's something that we want to just tell the community that this is a priority for us. Necessarily not because we want to, yeah, necessarily not because we want to oversee what you want to build and tell you exactly what to build, just because we want you to explore in that direction. And that was exactly what happened with the liquid wallet. Like the particular specs were not really driven down. The details were not really dealt by Albi itself. It was more of like an intuition and a direction that was given by like the Albi, by the taker himself, which on the other hand, when he submitted the bounty, all Albi had to do was like, is this a description? Is it the description that we gave? And okay, are we ready to accept this? Which they now accepted it on their own end. So it's more of like it's something of like the two economies seem like they are close, but when you look at it like from a detailed point of view, it looks like there are two different mental models, and we are somewhere in between where we don't know like which one we are targeting and what's really going on. Like when you're in where we are, we can see like there are two different things, and we something is telling us that this is what the user is saying, but we are trying to be sure that this is what this is the actual data and this is what the data represents, and this is what we are to do next. Is basically where our problem is. So the LB teammate was more, the LB poster was more like it's not a priority on their end. It's more of like a direction. So they are not ready to take him take him by the hand and tell him this is what I want and these are the specs that I want. But they are just looking for something that goes in that direction. So I I I don't know if I'm clear and if my data is clear, but it's still is it, I don't know if I can I can put it out here, but I wrote it on the chat. So let me try to read it from the board. Okay, on the board, what I have is like our quantitative data shows that on Resolvr.io, we have 0% assigned bounties, but we allow users to assign bounties, and our bounties are supposed to be assigned. We also have like on if you search a tax, if you search like bound tax on Primal, you can see like who used bounty and who has posted a bounty. All the bounties posted on Primal, they were not looking for someone to assign. They were just declaring it, and then people were working on it to come back and just point it out later. Then we had the insight was that our bounties are not even getting traction. Like the life cycle that we had for our user flow is not moving forward because there are no applications and there are no assigns. And then we also noticed that more of like a crowdfunding community is what is happening on Primal. And also the review is more of a community thing on Primal as well. So it's not something that I got my taker and I'm taking it and it's just me that is talking one-on-one with the taker and giving him the instructions. So it's something like the community is also um, fleshing it out together, not exactly one person, two people in a one-on-one conversation. And then they are open-ended, like it's something that at the end of the day, like the community can come to a point where they have seen that it's this particular person that is working on the bounty and no one else is like competing with him because he has that technicality. But like it's not something that at the beginning of the bounty, the person that is creating the bounty is looking for just one person to come and say, I want to select one person to work on this bounty. So I also spoke with three users. I thought that they were a good representation of what we wanted. So we have I asked him RBLB, which is the guy that completed the Alvis bounty, and he did say that whenever he thinks of bounties, he prefers the open-ended bounties. That is the bounties that are something that is more of it's a competition with all of us as a community trying to flesh it out and trying to build it together. And then he also felt that the arbitration was very important because of the protection from logging. Because if that is in place, then he doesn't have to just take only bounties from Albi. He can take bounties from literally everybody, knowing that he has that backing of the legal system. So from Tomek on the other end, which is the person that posted the bounties from Albi, he was more of like their open-ended call for action for non-urgent priorities. And he also believes that arbitration is something that is a communal affair. Even the acceptance of a bounty is more of a community thing, and it's not something of him or Albi giving the specs. So Manek is a one of these science direct bounty NGOs. So they have a list of bounties which they are managing on GitHub, which is not ideal for them. And they thought that Resolvr looks like they target the right software for them. So they were very excited about Resolvr, he took some time to speak with us as well. So he also spoke that like the most important features are like the crowdsourced bounties, and the review panels, which is what he's most excited about, which also points us back to like the crowdsourced like decision making in the whole process. And he also believes that there are like open-ended call to action of like something that he's not ready to like control, but like it's more of like community thing. I think it's one thing with where Nostar is, because like Nostar is like in the early days where like everybody's trying to look at what's happening next and trying to point in that direction. And basically that's why everybody's approaching like the whole bounty from such a direction, which is the reverse of what we built. So um one issue I have now is I could be blindsided because maybe I've not spoken to like a good subset that can represent like what the whole total user base. But I've gone through like I every day I wake up, I search the bounty tag on Primal, and I look at the interactions and I look at the way the bounties approach, and whether it becomes something of I'm looking for one person to do this with me, or something of I'm calling on everybody because we want to. This would be a good thing for the community to have. So that's basically what I've been doing, and every day, um, any new bounty that I see, and I try to group them. I'm always grouping it back into like this is a good thing for the community to have. I'm looking for more funders. I'm looking for someone that can take up the initiative and flesh this out. I think the one of the most important one is Jack's bounty. Even till now, he has not gone into any specifics, but there are still people like that are out there that are mentioning it every day and that are working on it. And and because they are working on such bounty and they keep mentioning it every day, if tomorrow someone makes a submission, it's not like in makes a submission that he feels that this bounty satisfies what Jack said. There's still the vacuum of the place of who takes that decision. Is it Jack? Because if Jack says that he does not, this bounty does not satisfy what he says, but then there's also like that person also saying that this bounty satisfied what Jack says. There has to be like a sustainable or something that's in place that people can fall back to. That this is the next line of action in such a scenario. So yeah, it's maybe with the course of knowledge and like every other person is very new to this because no one was like sitting and doing research and stuff. So maybe what I'm saying is overwhelming. But then it could be something that when we are leaving this call, we could just do like a small maybe research or something like that to see whether I'm actually blind-ended also. Yeah, literally. So I think I'm done ranting and I've gone through like all the insights that I have here, and I'm not, I'm still not like I need to find out more before I can be very sure of like what's the next line of action. So yeah, does anyone understand me or are there still questions? Like
What does everyone think? Thank you for sharing all of that, Uti.
yeah.
I'm going to give a quick summary of my understanding of what the product is itself, because it took a while to get my brain around it. So it seems like it's a middle person between the people who are actually doing the work, so actually doing the bounties, and then the actual marketplace or person or entity that gives the bounty itself. And the problem that it solves is that work is being done on the bounties and the bounty itself is being claimed by someone else. So the question that I have is the part that I don't really understand is how does the website or the infrastructure itself ensure that it like tracks the work of the bounty? Is it like the grantee? Is it like recorded, or how is that process done?
Okay. Yeah, that's
Hey, Uti, do you want me to speak to that, or?
yeah. You can speak. You can speak.
Hey, thanks everybody for your time today. I'm Aaron, also part of the Resolvr project. So yeah, you've definitely identified part of the way it's structured right now with the assigned. We're calling them bounty takers, but those are the workers basically, and you've got the bounty makers who are essentially the employers, so to speak. And the way that it's structured right now is because there's an assignment process that kind of lets everyone know, okay, this party is already working on the bounty, and so that's why there's a clear indication that there's no duplication of efforts happening.
Right, now I get it.
Your question, yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And so if there's a little tag on the side that we have right now that shows if it's an open bounty or an assigned bounty, and so everyone can click through on the bounty itself and see those tags and understand if it's open or not. So yeah, this is something we're also trying to work through. Is the way we have it set up right now is this kind of bilateral relationship between the bounty maker and the bounty taker that's not open-ended, which is a little bit of a deviation, like Uti was saying, from the traditional bounty, which is kind of like a first past the post, everybody's racing to get something done. And so we're trying to figure out the best way to align people's expectations of what a bounty is, and provide a service for those expectations, but also have this other system, which we think is helpful to avoid duplication of efforts, but also it is a good primitive for contracts generally. If you have a one-to-one assignment and a bilateral agreement between a maker and a taker, it doesn't have to be a bounty. That can be a contract for anything moving forward. And so that's kind of like the primitive we're trying to build out to then eventually move beyond just bounties and get into this kind of broader dispute resolution, legal, open source justice protocol system. So that's kind of our thinking thus far. But zeroing into just this Resolvr project, the bounty project right now, yeah, it's to provide a resource for folks who want to make sure they don't get rugged by the intermediaries, right? So trying to remove the intermediaries that are holding the funds.
Yeah, makes sense. It from at least my experience in the ecosystem, it solves a very real problem. So that's good. So nicely done. I have to be honest, I love it that you guys have actually taken time to speak to your users, to speak to people, or rather collect information. So I do understand this bit over here. It's this taxonomy over here for me that is it's just too intense for my brain. But if you guys would like to go through that, or I don't know what's useful for you guys.
Yeah, that is more of a that was more of a going back to that general legal court system that we're trying to build out on Nostr. Udi and I thought it would be helpful to. So I'm an attorney in my day job, and so I'm kind of advising on the legal design structure of all these processes, and so we thought it'd be helpful to build out what are all the elements in a conventional court system, and then that would help us kind of map those elements onto what we have with Nostr and Bitcoin and those tools. So up top is like all the different elements I could think of people and documents and things and places and concepts, conventional court systems are built on and use. And then I took those same elements and then kind of just went through the flow of like a normal dispute in the court system. So, at a basic level, when it comes to bounties, right? You have a dispute between party A and party B of a bounty maker and a bounty taker about whether or not the bounty has satisfied the criteria. And so the standards of social conduct, that's going to be, traditionally that's your laws, your regulations, your contracts. And so here that would be primarily the criteria of the bounty, right? Has that been specified? But also, over time, I think, and actually now there's probably a set of norms and conventions around the bounty ecosystem and open source development about what is fair and what's not fair. So those are also things that are less concrete, but probably go into creating the dispute in the first place and also resolving it. So then, the next stage, if negotiation fails over the dispute, then that's when you get the court proceedings. And there's, specific documents that are filed, like the complaint, and then the process, which gives the court jurisdiction over the parties. And then you have to use intermediaries that, their job is to go out and like literally find the defendant and like, hand them the stuff and, try to chase them down. Sometimes it's very dramatic, and sometimes people are hiding in their houses trying not to take process. That's all just kind of a legal game to, say the court has the legal power now to coerce you into the judgment, right? Into following a judgment. So we're not going to need to have any of that kind of coerciveness or any of that those kind of legal formalities here. But what is interesting, right, is we're kind of replacing with Nostr and relays. We're replacing this clerk's office here, which is where everything gets filed and reposited, and everyone can reference what's going on. So the documents on Nostr, right, and our bounty events, whether they've been taken, whether they've been solved, whether they've been paid out, ZAP receipts, those types of things, are all these kind of orange documents that would traditionally go to a clerk's office, and now they're going on Nostr as notes and other stuff into relays. So that's kind of the way I've been thinking of things. We're replacing that physical space now. On the next stage, you've got where the parties set out their case. The plaintiff, the one who brings the case. But that was in the first part up here. The plaintiff sets out, I was wronged because party B didn't, fulfill my bounty, and here's all my allegations about what happened. And then the other side gets a chance to respond with the answer and says, no, I did satisfy the bounty. Look, here's the bounty specifications, and here's my work. Here's what I did. That's where you kind of just set out both sides of the story, right? Again, into the clerk's office, being reposed there. Then you get into like discovery, where there's actual evidence that the parties can create and find and submit, again, to the clerk's office and to the court and to each other. And sometimes, again, because you have the coercive power of the state behind you, you can use these documents called subpoenas to force other people who are not in the case, these non-parties, to turn over evidence that they might have related to the dispute. Again, this is not going to be the case with bounties. We're just basically going to have the work product and the criteria. That's kind of the evidence that we have. It's a smaller universe of evidence. And then finally, there's the hearing and the trial, where all that evidence gets submitted to now another physical space, the courtroom, where you have a synchronous hearing with decision makers, judges, and jurors. So for the bounty example, the judges and the jurors are kind of merged together. And right now we have this open crowdsourced poll, Nostr polls, which have, again, we have Nostr replacing the physical courtroom for the hearing. And so again, the poll is just, here's the bounty, and then there'd be a link to the GitHub, I guess, the pull request and all the work product, and then the crowd, all the other users of the website can assess the work product and grade it essentially against the criteria in the original bounty, and then vote whether or not the bounty is satisfied. And then that's back where you have the standards of social conduct, right? What is guiding the jury, the decision maker's decision? It can be, again, those norms. Maybe there's some reason that a certain specification wasn't followed. And there's a good explanation for that a party has put forth. And then you've got your judgments at the end, right? Decision maker gives a judgment, and there's a few different pieces that go into that in the conventional system. But here we're just going to have essentially the event of the finalized poll, the Nostr event being the finalized poll is the judgment, right? And then right now those crowdsourced poll events are advisory, right? There's nothing forcing a party to abide by what the crowd has said, but it is a Nostr event that's recorded, on the relays, and it's going to be available to view by the public. And so parties who want to keep their reputation have an incentive to abide by the decisions of the crowd. That's the basic system we have now, kind of walking it through the conventional court schema. I'll stop there. I can keep going, but
hey, thanks for sharing that. So I have a question that was very thorough, and Uti and you talked about very different parts of this whole project, and I just wanted to mentally just kind of split it up. So there seems like any marketplace has the challenge of getting people on there and connecting people. So first, you need to find people like actually look at this thing and understand what it does and how it can benefit them. And then you actually need to get them to start using it. Like they need to match it against, this is a problem I have in my life. This is a great tool for it. Now I'm going to do it. And then you have the challenge of, I took a screenshot here. Like this is the create bounty screen here, where you had a very thorough explanation of how these conflicts are resolved, but I didn't see an explanation anywhere on the website how bounties actually work. I can create a bounty here, I can enter some information and I post it, but that doesn't really tell me, okay, this is what happens next. There will be 30 days and people will apply and you'll get an email or a Nostr DM or something will keep you in the loop, and then you should do this and then we do that. And I noticed the same thing for applying for a bounty. I just press this button, leave a quick message, but it doesn't really, it tells me that it will be sent to the bounty creator for review. But then I was curious, well, like how long is that going to take? What happens next? Should I start working on it and some of this stuff? So I think getting people on there and getting them into those funnels, like for the bounty creator, telling them, there are 3 different types of bounties typically. Here's an example of how the open-ended bounties work, and we'll have a whole case study about how Albi did it. Here's another type of bounty that is about very technical specific things, and here's a whole case study about how this other project works. So people can understand ahead of time how this whole thing should ideally play out, including the conflict resolution, and then they can feel more comfortable actually doing it themselves. Then for the bounty takers, I did see you post on Resolvr Nostr account. You kind of post I think that's another part, like just connecting people with the information. It's like saying like only 3 days left to apply for this bounty here. Make sure to sign up, or giving people an option to subscribe. So whatever inbox they may be using, they can try kind of get this feed of bounties in there, and they know exactly where they stand in these processes. So I think just clarifying. Like just smoothing out that way to get into these flows and giving people that understanding of how things work, that feels like it could be one thing. But Uti, it sounds like you're doing a great job already reaching out to different projects. It seems like another thing, like I know Zeus has has a Evan from Zeus. He likes to do bounties, just working with the projects and helping them. Hey, can I help you set up some bounties? Just working with them to figure out what works for them and getting the projects comfortable with the platform as well. That's basically marketing and growth marketing type of activities, right? That's very different than moving the technical side of things forward. But yeah, there seem like very different tasks at very different parts of this project. And just one more thing, I kept thinking of Geyser because they built a platform as well, connecting two different groups. One, the project creator, and then the people who want to donate or fund these crowdfunding projects. And it could be interesting to talk to them about how they managed to get people on there, what type of activities they did, what's worked for them. Because I think they have like 2 years of experience now with making that work. And then once you have more people going through this, then you're probably going to get a bunch of people saying this works great and this doesn't work, and then you'll have a better idea of what to actually change about it.
I want to tag off what Christoph said. From what I understand, then there are two separate user groups of the interface. So one would be the actual bounty creators, the people giving the bounty. So they're actually going to be using this to create the bounty. And then they would need the confirmation, which Christoph mentioned, as they go through the flow. And then the other user group is the people taking the bounties, because then they're going to say like, hey, I want to apply for this one. So in an ideal world, everything's going through Resolvr in terms of that, the thing is that let's put ourselves in the shoes of the bounty creators. In a way, Resolvr is creating an additional task for them if they're having to post their bounties on Resolvr. It might be interesting to see if there's a way to autofill that information or something like that, because I don't know, I'm just sort of thinking out loud.
I think people go to marketplaces because of the reach. Like
Right.
when Medium came out, I would post articles there because Medium had this huge network and it would just be shown to thousands of people, right? I went there because there was a network behind it. So you do have to put in a little bit of work, but there's kind of the promise of like, this will help me get this bounty filled in just the right way. I'm not going to get 1,000 spam people applying, but it will be, highly qualified, ideally. The autofilling could be helpful. I think there's also the part about guiding people, like, tips how to write a good bounty, and maybe it can analyze the text, AI, whatever. This is poorly written. You need to be more specific here. Add your link to GitHub.
No, that's a great idea. The kind of like automatic AI feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would say, if you guys are able to create some very basic clickable prototypes, take it and put it in front of a bounty creator and ask them to give you some feedback. And, we call this rapid prototyping because you want to do it as fast as possible. Get rapid feedback, change the design, make any, suggestions. I can share the link to the UX research toolkit, which we built, and that should give you the recipe for the rapid prototyping. I'm just going to find it here, but I'll share it in the chat.
Yeah, and going back to your comment about giving the bounty makers an extra task. They've got to come here and they've got to fill this in. The idea now is, and some of our team has proposed a Nostr improvement proposal that standardizes these bounty events on Nostr so that they wouldn't have to come to Resolvr necessarily. They could post it from their client and it would propagate out and everyone can see it on whatever client they're using. So the creation and the discovery phase of bounties would be standardized and could be implemented on whatever client wants to merge the NIP, right? That's what we're trying to get, just drive down those friction points, and really trying to use Nostr and the interoperability of Nostr to our advantage.
Brilliant. Human resources. There's another website that came up to mind as well. I don't know if you guys know Upwork. It's also it's a workplace for remote workers. I think it's upwork.com.
Right.
Upwork.com also, so what Upwork.com does is they don't post bounties, but it's similar. They post projects for working. So let's say they need a graphic designer. They post as a project. Hundreds of people apply. The person who then posted it will then select one person. But what happens is when that person starts working on the project, the amount of money that's being dedicated to the project goes into something that you call escrow. And
Yes.
then that escrow is held until the project is finished. But then what they also have is they have a dispute resolution process, because sometimes what happens is sometimes the person who posts the project, the worker does the work and then they're unhappy with it and then they're like, no, I don't want to pay. So they also have a process integrated. They call it the dispute resolution process. It
Yep.
might be interesting to have a look at their user flow as well, because it's kind of the
That's
same.
Upwork.
It's Upwork. I think
Yeah.
it's Upwork.com.
Yeah, that's been on our radar but I haven't delved deep into their dispute resolution process. Yeah.
Yeah, they have dispute resolution. They probably have some screens and stuff, but I guess you'd have to go into dispute to actually see the screens. But
Yeah, maybe there's some documentation.
Yeah, 100%.
I've gone through it.
Perfect.
It does rely on state arbitrators. So basically, you have to make a submission to like the state arbitrator, and it's around like $290 something. Also, American arbitration something. So I'm not sure, even if you're not in America, you can't even use the system. And that's one of the things we want to solve, like borderless arbitration and something
Sounds
of that.
amazing. Borderless arbitration. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Nostr integration is great. Nostr is just still a very, very small little island, kind of secluded by itself. So I mean, there are a lot of builders, a lot of Bitcoiners, a lot of tech savvy people on there. So you'll definitely find some stuff, but it might limit the potential reach of Resolvr. So how I mean, how do you look at that? Are you also open to breaking outside of Nostr a bit, or do you really want to?
Yeah, no,
stay
the
within it?
Nostr is the tool, right,
Mhm.
for our communications, and we're using it. We're also trying to build a desktop app that will use Nostr and basically mirror this web app interface, but allow us to do more complex things like Bitcoin native escrow. And so the Nostr is great. There's developers on there, but primarily it's a communications tool that's interoperable. So we can abstract away, and we really want to abstract away a lot of the Nostr-ness behind it eventually. Like logging in with your public keys, and that's all very technical and definitely a hurdle and friction point for mainstream users. The other markets would just be general open source developers who are not Bitcoiners and Nostr developers, because that is one of these individuals who Udi spoke with, who found us, is not, I think they're aware of Bitcoin and perhaps use Bitcoin, but they're primarily working with a nonprofit that funds open source development, and they wanted to use a system like ours, not for Bitcoin development, but just general open source development. So that is, that's kind of the other larger market that we're hoping to get into. And so yes, Nostr, there is that tension. If you go real hard into the Nostr narrative and marketing, it's confusing to the mainstream for sure. So we're trying to strike that balance between those who are, if you know, and you see it and you're like, oh, I get it, this is Nostr native. And if you don't know, that's okay, you can still use it, right? That's the always the challenge with Nostr, I think, is trying to abstract away those complexities.
Yeah, hopefully that'll be just a matter of a little bit more time. We have about 5 minutes to the hour. The we covered really a lot of stuff about this project because there is a lot to it. And it was kind of similar with we had 2 calls with the 10-10-1 team. In the first one was just the hour was just enough to kind of get an overview over everything and understand some of the complexities. And then the second one, we really narrowed in on some specific design topics because everybody was kind of caught up a bit. We could do something here as well if you're interested to do that.
Yeah, that would be
But
great.
what does everyone else think about the last 5 minutes here and then moving forward?
Fully on board with what Christoph said.
Yeah, and in addition to the 10-10-1, I still don't understand the really the stuff there. Resolvr is much more kind of graspable to me, but to have initial thoughts or get how do you say, exposed to everything. This was a great intro, but to respond in real time without thinking too much about it and trying to test it out, I think it would help to have a kind of a second round.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting for a second before a second call. We should actually one of us should create a bounty and for something that the others can do and apply for, and then we should not accept it and go through the whole
Yes.
process, so we can tell hands on how this works.
Good one. Yeah, that
Yeah,
would
absolutely.
truly get our brains around this just using it. Like there's one thing showing us the screens and all the rest and the user flow, but there's another thing with actually using it. We'll be able to grasp it much easier if there's any way to maybe give us access to just a test account or anything like that, or
if you have just go sign up for a Nostr account anywhere and get a private public key, and then you can sign in with those. There's it's totally open already as long as you have a Nostr key pair.
If you have Albi, then you're fine.
You can generate
Nostr
key on Resolvr.
Yeah, that's true. You can also there's a flow to generate a fresh account on Resolvr, and there is let's see if I can pull it up. We did in our pitch video, I walked through the whole flow, so you can see an example of how that's working currently. Let me see if I can just pull it up.
Yeah, I can create a bounty of 1,000 sats or something to, I don't know, AI generate some goofy Bitcoin images or something where it's easy to participate, right? We get to feel things out a bit, and just see how it all works out.
All right, here we go. Here's the video. I'll just put this in there you go.
Cheers.
All right.
Or Mo, how about you set up a bounty for us?
I should set up a bounty. Okay, I can try. I'm gonna just add this.
It doesn't have to be now, right? We're about to wrap up. Okay, hi Prem. We're just about to wrap up here in a couple minutes. We just went over the project. We decided there'll be a second one. We're going to do some practical use of the project. And Resolvr team, it's also helpful then for the second one. If you can identify your priority of something you'd like to focus on, then we can really dig deep on that one. And it sounds like we heard a bunch of different things, from how to even get people on there to posting bounties to dispute resolution and all of this stuff. It helps if there's just one thing.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll narrow down which milestone we're trying to work through for the next call.
Where would be the link that I would set up the bounty, or has it been shared already?
So resolvr.io.
Okay, perfect.
Is the web page.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Mo, you could record your whole interaction.
Gotcha.
And then Uti, you don't have to publicly share it, but maybe for Uti and the team, it would be interesting to see like where you click and if you share your thoughts on while you're doing this, thinking out loud. You don't have to. It's just an option.
Good one. Yeah, I mean, I have Noster, so I'll just look up my keys, and then I should be good.
Okay, and maybe the bounty can be AI generate a Resolvr mascot.
Okay.
I like that.
Nice.
Okay. Right.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for all your time today. These insights were very helpful, very valuable. Again, just very thankful and grateful for this group and all the work that you're doing and time you're donating. So thank you.
And thank you for opening up here and sharing everything. It's also super interesting for us.
100%.
Of course.
So cool. Thanks, everyone. Let's try to wrap it up. I'm going to stop the recording here. For anyone watching this, thanks also for watching it. Everyone, thanks for joining, and feel free to continue to chat here.
Thanks, Christoph.
Thanks all.
All right.
Bye,
I'm going
everybody.
to jump off too. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone.